Okay, we're gonna react to some stuff. You guys love React content. I know you do. Now that we've talked about the fun shit, Zoran Mamdani aura farming on the right wing for being stupid fucks, there's one thing that I wanted to react to, which was making the rounds, and that is this like liberal Zionist type lady, who is so evil it actually transcends what I think a lot of conservatives are capable of. Like, this is the kind, like, you remember how I was saying the other time that there are certain types of evil that it's very difficult to depict in children's media because of the complexities of evil in the real life, in the real world. This is one kind of evil that is simple enough to depict in children's media, but I think would actually be too insidious and scary to depict in children's media, partly because of like how banal it is. And I'm kind of stalling for time so I can look for it. Okay, yeah, former Obama speechwriter. This is the woman who, okay, we're gonna react to some stuff. You guys love React content. I know you do. We're gonna react to this woman, Sarah Hurwitz, who was a speechwriter for Barack Obama and then Michelle Obama. Laments to the Jewish Federation that people are finding content from Al Jazeera and Nick Fuentes. Great that she's combining both of those into a single category. You know, catboy, repressed gay white supremacist, and, you know, pretty reputable news outlet that covers mostly Middle Eastern stuff, but has a, like, somewhat pronounced petro-state bias at times. On social media and seeing videos of the carnage in Gaza. Holocaust education has backfired in part as people see Palestinians as Jews victims, she adds. They think the lesson of the Holocaust is you fight the big, powerful people hurting the weak people. They think the lesson of the Holocaust is you fight the big, powerful people hurting the weak people. Yeah, and then the implication is that the lesson that we were supposed to take from that is that Israel just gets to do whatever the fuck it wants. Only dumb people watch the news. May or may not be true. It depends on the reasoning for which you watch the news. Let's zoom in a little bit. I don't usually like making it full screen. Let's go to 150%. Looks pretty good, I think. It's going to be a little bit aligned to the side here, but let's listen to this really disgusting clip. I heard some of this, and I actually, like, formed a pit in my stomach. Like, it hurt to watch.
I think that since October 7th, but really before then, there have been huge shifts in America on how people think about Jews and Israel. And I think that is especially true of young people. So we are now wrestling with a new, I think, generational divide here. And I think that's particularly true in that social media is now our source of media. And this, you know, it used to be that the media you got in America was American media, and it was pretty mainstream. You know, it generally didn't express extreme anti-Israel views.
This is already, like, insidiously evil in kind of a subtle way, but what she's lamenting here is that social media, like the issue she's taking with social media is not, sorry, excuse me, is not like AI, misinformation, whatever. It's not white supremacy. No, the issue she has with social media is that it is enabling American youth to get sources of news that aren't directly influenced by the American state, and enables them to access news that doesn't frame things from a, like, uncritically pro-Israel standpoint. That is her problem here. We have to do something about this not state-controlled media.
You had to go to a pretty weird bookstore to find global media and fringe media.
Literally, what she's taking issue with is that information can flow freely. She wants, like, this is a pro-censorship position. Oh yeah, it used to be you had to go really far out of your way to find something that disagreed with the official position of the state.
But today, we have social media, which is a global medium. Right? It is shaped, its algorithms are shaped by billions of people worldwide who don't really love Jews.
And when she says don't really love Jews, she means aren't subservient to Israel. You will find out why I say that in a moment, but I'm sure that, like, the lead up gave you sort of plenty of reason to make that inference.
So while in the 1990s, a young person probably wasn't going to find Al Jazeera or someone like Nick Fuentes, today those media outlets find them. They find them on their phones. It's also this increasingly post-literate media, less and less text, more and more videos. So you have
that much is true. So far, insofar as she has said descriptive claims, I need to preface this, because this is actually part of how insidious this woman's evil is. So far, she has mostly made correct descriptive statements. Social media is a place of unparalleled media access. It did used to be that media in America actually was pretty tightly censored and state controlled. You actually did have to go pretty far out of your way to find stuff like that. Find stuff that was like critical of Israel back in the day. And to her point here, yes, it is also the case that because of the way that content circulates, because of the way that the internet interacts with you via the algorithm and how it shapes our attention span, stuff like that, a lot of the media that we get, a lot of the news is now in the format of videos as opposed to articles, text. Yeah, she is basically like, I'll get to what I think is really going on with her in a minute, but I actually do think that she believes what she's saying. Right?
Of TikTok just smashing our young people's brains all day long with video of carnage in Gaza.
Not with anything else, just the carnage in Gaza. Wow, yeah. Seeing a genocide unfold in real time is profoundly negatively impactful for the mental health of the youth. I wonder what we can do to address this problem going forward. I wonder if there's a way to maybe, stop the horrors of the world from unfolding and prevent people from experiencing them secondhand. What do you got?
And this is why so many of us can't have a sane conversation with younger Jews, because anything
so many of us, take note of that
we try to say to them.
Also, with younger Jews, particularly Jewish people in America, young Jewish people in America are almost uniquely pro-Palestine. For all the faults of the way that modern media has influenced the political landscape, it has enabled people to be much more internationalist minded in a way that leads them to oppose things like genocide in other countries. But man, it's so hard to get through to young Jews on why they should love the state of Israel when it's committing atrocities against other Semitic peoples.
Have a sane conversation with younger Jews, because anything that we try to say to them, they are hearing it through this wall of carnage. So I want to give data and information.
Yeah.
And facts and arguments, and they are just seeing in their minds carnage.
Yeah, it's pretty hard to convince people of something when there's readily available visual evidence that you're full of shit. She's complaining that she doesn't get to do some historiography bullshit. I know exactly how liberal Zionist Jews love to do this, by the way, because I had family who was like this. I've since cut contact with that family. They are no longer a part of my life, and I think they were part of they were in a relationship with somebody else in the family. We weren't relatives by blood, but they're not part of that relationship anymore, and I think that's better for both of them. And I know that this person is pretty, I think, sound in that decision, doesn't regret it. Liberal Zionist Jews particularly love to do this shit where they will try to weave the most weird narrative of like liberal statehood, God promised us this land, literal blood and soil type shit, clothed in a veneer of liberalism, to sell you on the idea that simultaneously Israel didn't do anything bad, but also like all the people suffering aren't actually suffering, or it's fake or something like that. That narrative doesn't work when you can watch Gaza be obliterated in real time. When you see the bodies piling up, when there are pictures and videos of children burning to death in hospitals after Israeli bombings, right? When all of the civilian infrastructure in Gaza has been destroyed. Most of the schools and hospitals are no longer standing. All the means of life have been targeted systematically, and the area has been reduced to rubble. When you see that, you see like satellite photography, drone footage, that is almost impossible to fake. And you see unequivocally, doesn't matter what argument you put to people, if you're a Zionist trying to like get people to believe that they should love the state of Israel, it is impossible for you to break through that absolute gut punch. That is an entire city reduced to rubble and hundreds of thousands dead, confirmed by multiple video sources, news sources, text sources, and whatever. And she's complaining that she can't just fucking lie to the youth like she used to.
And I sound obscene.
And that's because she is obscene.
And, I think, unfortunately, the very smart, bet that we made on Holocaust education to serve as anti-Semitism education, in this new media environment, I think that is beginning to break down a little bit, because...
I wonder why. Holocaust education has backfired. I wonder why she will say that Holocaust education has backfired.
Holocaust education is absolutely essential.
Yeah, it reminds me of a certain war that happened that resulted in a certain genocide called the Holocaust.
But I think it may be confusing some of our young people about anti-Semitism because they learn about big, strong Nazis hurting weak, emaciated Jews. And they think, oh, anti-Semitism is like anti-black racism, right? Powerful white people against powerless black people.
Yes. Faith in the youth restored, by the way. This video restored my faith in the youth. Because yes, if you look at any type of Holocaust education, if you learn about that as a kid, and your takeaway is, wow, I don't like it when big, strong political powers bully minority groups to such an extent potentially that they even kill them in mass slaughters and stuff. We should live in a world where the political order doesn't enable big, strong powers to like bully and destroy minority groups. Like as a kid, you think like, wow, that's pretty bad. If that happens today, that's really bad. That shouldn't happen. That is the correct lesson to take. But to her, that is the incorrect lesson to take. What she has told you right here is she does not principally oppose the Holocaust.
So when on TikTok all day long they see powerful Israelis hurting weak, skinny Palestinians, it's not surprising that they think, oh, I know, the lesson of the Holocaust is you fight Israel. You fight the big, powerful people hurting the weak people.
Yes, that is the lesson. In fact, it is actually shocking how one-to-one the lead up to the genocide in Palestine and the actions of the state of Israel are to the state of Germany during World War II. Israel might be the only state in the world that's insane enough to actually follow through on a genocide in this manner, the way that Nazi Germany did in the 1930s and 40s. And she's like, man, it sucks that the lesson our kids took from Holocaust education is that genocide is bad. The lesson we should have tried to teach them is that they should be subservient to the state of Israel. This is what real fascism sounds like. MAGA is a fascist movement. The American far right is fascist. I don't intend to dispel any of that because all of that is true. But your average MAGA individual is infinitely less of a fascist than this woman. This woman is authentically more of a fascist than any random Republican voter, because I don't think the Republican voter believes in anything strongly enough for them to behave like this. The average Republican voter, genuinely, I mean this sincerely, I feel like if you asked Republican voters, a Republican voter who is, pro-Trump, pro-MAGA, whatever, most far right of the far right, barring like Nick Fuentes' audience, you ask them their opinion on free and fair elections. Yeah, I love free and fair elections. They'll throw some shit in about the Democrats and electoral fraud, blah, 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 right? But legitimately, they would have some kind of deference and acknowledgement for democratic processes and institutions. Yes, democracy is good. The republic needs to be preserved from enemies, foreign and domestic, whatever, right? And a lot of them, being libertarian coded, probably would not like a state that demands worship. And in fact, most of them probably don't believe anything strongly enough to get to that point anyways. This is like, it's relatively basic stuff. This woman, what's her name? Sarah Hurwitz just went on a 2-minute explanation of what problems social media, what quote unquote problems social media has brought to the world, where she explained that she is not principally opposed to the Holocaust. Oh, the lesson we should have taken from the Holocaust isn't that, big, strong political powers shouldn't bully weak groups of people. Yeah, literally, like, this divine covenant with, like, this is the subservience to the state underwritten in this video. And the like, justification for Palestinian suffering and just human suffering in general. And the implication, because it's with regards to the state of Israel specifically, the implication that it is God's promised land, blood and soil. This was promised to us by divine right, and we must live here to realize a heaven on earth where all of the degenerates are purged from society, and that's good, actually, makes her so much more of a fascist than any MAGA supporter could ever hope to be. No amount of vice signaling could make you look as evil as this woman is. If there is a hell, I hope she rots and burns in it forever. Let me zoom back out. 100%. Here we go. She'll probably get mad at me for not respecting hierarchy. Oh, I know. She would. I referenced experiences I've had with family who were liberal Zionists and are no longer part of the family, El Bozo. And yes, they make a lot of arguments from the perspective of subservience to the state. In fact, that is their go-to. To refer back to this discussion I had where this person tried to lecture me on why Israel has a divine right to exist or some shit. The last argument of last resort that they went to in justifying the existence of the state of Israel was that, well, everybody's a Zionist because being a Zionist just refers to the existence of a state. So, everybody's a Zionist. And what I told them was, no, I'm still not a Zionist because I don't like the state. I don't believe there should be a state. Zionists, like, because of that's like the bedrock upon which a lot of Zionism is built. Just like, I don't know, more or less Jewish coded or Christian coded, whatever, depending on which version of the justifying myth of Israel you're employing, right? All of them are actually slavishly devoted to hierarchy and the state to such an extent that, like, they will say some astoundingly evil shit And that's the kind of evil that I think it's actually almost impossible to depict in children's cartoons. But now insidious evil with such a casual superiority complex, that, and with such a casual acceptance and superiority complex, that you get mildly, maternalistically frustrated that you can't convince the youth to be okay with thousands of kids dead. Cartoon villains have the decency to speak in an over-the-top voice, to twist their mustache, and to be like, I'm going to blow up the world. Think Dr. Eggman type shit. And he's pretty charming, depending on the entry, he could be more or less evil. But cartoon villains, you have a good idea of what kind of evil that is. It's a very spectacular and visually evident kind of evil. This is an evil so casual that this is actually a threat to the existence of modern society in a stable form. I actually think that people like that woman, the prevalence of the ideology that governs that woman's thought, that ideology that she represents, is more of a threat to this country and every country on earth than the ideology of your average MAGA individual, because your average MAGA individual is driven largely by emotion, and they are very stupid. And what that means is that they can be pulled in any which way politically if they're given a compelling enough emotional narrative, which means you could use that to make the country a lot better. There are people who voted for Donald Trump and then voted for Zohran Mamdani. With people like that woman, they are educated enough to understand how evil they are and to say, you're the evil one actually because you disagree with me. My vision of the world requires that this group of people be dead. And they're committed to that in an affirmative sense. It's like there's a certain emotional coldness in that ideology that is more threatening. And that ideology is ultimately, it's either neoliberal or neoconservative Zionism, right? And in this case, I am actually taking a page out of liberal Zionist playbook in defining Zionism, which is just the ideology of statism, of worshiping the state, of believing that a state should govern society with a strong, divinely guiding hand. This is the ideology of the deep state, the military-industrial complex. That ideology, more or less exemplified in any given person who's a part of that, socioeconomic group, is probably the gravest threat that the world faces. Because they are the kinds of people, in addition to the billionaires who are a much stupider version of this, who will burn down the whole world so that they can competently administer the cinders that are left. Reminds me of the people who talk about religion. That's not a coincidence. Religion and the state are deeply intertwined. In fact, there's all evidence indicates that organized religion emerged at about the same time as the state because the state needed a way to justify its own existence. How do you convince people that they should give you all the control of the food, all the control of the valuables, all the control of the area, all the control of the weapons? Easy. You say that whatever spiritual deity you believe in told you that, and you get somebody who's very familiar with the religion, a priest, to sell that narrative. Religion and the state fundamentally are one and the same. Mechanisms of social control by a threat of violence, either real or implied. That's why in the earliest eras of history, the city-states and the very early empires, a lot of the heads of state would be head of church. Priest kings, god emperors, god kings. It's no coincidence that people who talk about subservience to God in God's kingdom and people who talk about the Zionist state sound very similar. It's because they're two sides of the same coin. Religion and the state, same thing. It's a method of control and building hierarchy where an in-group gets to wield power at the expense of an out-group. And much like the state, if you leave that unchecked, pogroms will ensue, slaughters, genocides. Anyways, that concludes this episode of Try Not to Be a Fucking Anarchist Challenge. Difficulty impossible. It's just that religion is kind of, now that the state has been sort of secularized, and that people are prepared to worship the state outside of existing religious structures, the two have kind of diverged. Funnily enough, the separation of church and state achieved that in more than one way. It separated the church from, lawmaking and stuff like that, but it also separated the state from the need to spiritually justify itself, because now it had a more direct, more worldly method of perpetuating its control. That is to slightly broaden the in-group so that more people are willing to, become its adherents. Does that make sense? I fucking hate that lady. Sarah Hurwitz? I think that was her name. Like I said, if there is an eternal torment nexus, she belongs there. Cut the segment. Thanks for watching, and support the channel if you would be so kind.